Okay, Assalamualaikum and very good morning, everybody. Can you hear me, everybody?
Waalaikumsalam, Dr.
Okay, very good. Okay, we shall start
Assalamualaikum.
our class. Today's is on construction safety benchmarking. So all the slide notes I already upload into your e-learning. Okay. So last 2 weeks, we already mentioned about accident causation, causes of accident. Basically, I have given you all kind of data just to give some kind of indicator to what extent our accident statistic and whatnot. And with regard to statistic, for sure, we need to basically look at the latest one. But for just um, to mention the the level of statistic is okay, even though we use the old one. All right. So the statistic has mentioned about still, if we compare our country to other country, we are still developing country. There is no way that we are going to get the same at par with a so-called developed nation because there are so much things that need to be done anyway. All right. Then again, I already mentioned about accident generate costs. So that's why we need to avoid or try to minimize accident as much as possible. And then even in our country, we do have what we call master plan with regard to OSH. Every 5 years, DOSH department will basically release a 5-year master plan. And I think this is 2020. We are supposed to have a new master plan uh, so that we are going to use that thing for the coming next 5 years. And then, okay, let's say based on whatever statistic that we do have, the issue is that can safety in our construction industry or even in your country, for instance, if, for instance, you do some kind of study, maybe you know that your country level of accident is at what level, okay, maybe it is good enough for this year. The issue is that how do we improve? Okay, if you want to improve on anything, not only safety, on any field or any discipline within project or construction management, we can always use the concept of what we call benchmarking. Maybe you have been introduced to this wording in by Dr. Rosanna or whatever in construction and project management. So benchmarking has been used a lot in all industry, not only in safety. When you need to improve on anything, okay, when you want to improve, then you will utilize this concept, benchmarking, uh, what we call knowledge. All right. Okay. Again, for instance, this is a new information compared to the my previous slide. Okay, I didn't put that thing inside previous slide, accident causation. So for instance, when we look at the statistic, we always try to plot the statistic in a few years so that we can see what could be the trend. And normally, with regard to accident, okay, we always try to come up with so-called fatality rate. Fatality rate per 100,000 workers, registered workers. And then another one is fatality accident rate. Accident rate is for per 1,000 workers. Why? Because that is the international comparison. If we want to compare accident rate and fatality rate between a nation, we should have some kind of so-called index. Otherwise, it will not be accurate. It is like comparing, for instance, the fatality in our country with regard to COVID compared to the America. America for sure, they do have 330 million population. We only have around 33. So we cannot compare in terms of the number itself, but if we compare in terms of the population, that could be more accurate comparison. Okay, so we can see the trend, the downward trend, okay. And then again, the occupational disease, also we do have this kind of statistic. It looks like it's going up, up and up. So this is quite natural. When you have a lot of industry, and for instance, your economy is booming, for sure you are going to have a lot of construction activities, manufacturing activities. So basically that kind of things are quite expected, okay? And then, okay, when we do have statistics, at the end of the day, we should basically come up with a so-called target, okay? So a few years back, when we did this kind of statistic, based on whatever years, we already have the data. And then in 2020, which is now, okay, what is our target in terms of accident, statistic, and then fertility rate, and then accident rate, okay? Okay, next would be, okay, this is example of cause of accident. I already mentioned accident basically generate costs, which could be very high. So we try to avoid as much as possible in terms of the losses of human life, the losses of property damages, and impact to the environment, and then basically the amount of compensation. So if every year we need to pay a compensation, so the money that get collected through insurance premium might not be sufficient, okay? Because as we all know, the medical expenses is getting higher and higher by days. Even though the trend of number of accident, the overall number of accident could be reduced, but then the medical costs tend to be increasing because that is the issue. Okay, so and then again, this is example of a comparison. Okay, we do have some comparison here in this chart here between a certain nation. The number in bracket is basically the fatality rate, and then this number is basically accident rate. And it looks like if you compare to a so-called developed nation, UK, even Singapore, they do have normally figure around 4 and below. That is that kind of figure that we should be aiming at, okay? But again, even though our number might not be as high as compared to other developing nation, but again, the issue of how accurate is the data. If the data is not being measured accurately, then the statistic might not be accurate as well. But at least based on whatever information that we have, we can make comparison. So meaning to say, if we compare to country, a developed nation, so basically there are always plenty of room that we can improve. So if being a responsible organization or nation or whatever, by right, we should always improve regardless of whatever our comfort zone that we already have right now. The good spirit of philosophy is always improve, improve, and improve. That is always the concept. Okay, if you want to improve, then we are going to utilize what we call benchmarking. Since we are talking about safety in this class, so we want to zoom in safety benchmarking. So what is safety benchmarking? So safety benchmarking is basically making a comparison, okay? Making a comparison between a better organization, better country. If you want to improve, you must have some kind of benchmark that you need to refer to. For instance, if I own a company, so my statistic in my company is I do have the statistic, but if I want to improve further, for sure I will have to find a partner, a different company which is better than my company statistic, so that I can learn from that organization what not to do, what you need to do. At the end of the day, after you learn and then you try to practice and then implement at your workplace, perhaps after a few years, it will not take immediately, maybe it will take around 5 years, then only you are going to be at least at par or even better than the company that you benchmark with. And that is the idea. So the idea is basically try to get to know your own strength and weaknesses in terms of safety and health. Okay, then once you understand your strength and weaknesses, so that you are not going to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it is good that you can learn from the experience, but learning from the experience will take a long time, and sometimes it can be very costly. When you make a mistake, you cannot basically turn back the history. So it is better that you can learn from other organizations very fast, so that you try to avoid all kind of mistake, and then you basically jumpstart your organization in order to achieve whatever KPI that you set. That is the idea of benchmarking. Okay, when we do benchmarking, we must rely on the so-called indicator. What are the indicators that can move us to a better position? Okay, before we go into this kind of indicator, let me share with you another slide. Okay, this slide. Okay, so this slide is all about benchmarking the engineering and construction industry based on Construction Industry Institute US. Okay, I think maybe in your notes I already put this slide anyway. Okay, so if for instance you do not understand about the word benchmarking, you can take a look at this slide in order to understand what this benchmarking is all about in general term. But this one is basically how do you apply benchmarking in construction, not only for safety and health. Okay, you see, what is benchmarking? Benchmarking is systematic process of measuring performance against recognized leader. This is what we call partner. You find a better partner so that you can make comparison, and then you put into practice, and then you adopt or adapt whatever, so that you can be at par with the so-called a good organization. That is what we call benchmarking. So benchmarking is about comparison between the best in the class. You do not want to get a partner which is lower than you. It is useless. You cannot learn, okay? You must get a person or organization better than you. Think outside of the box, okay? For instance, if you want to make changes, you cannot be doing the same thing all over again. You must start doing new things. Then only you are going to see a new result. If you keep doing the same thing again and again and again, and you expect the result will be different, please forget about that. and then improve overall project and overall system. So once you do the benchmarking, because that is the concept, hopefully at the end of the day, you will see some kind of improvement. Okay, I'm not going to go through the whole slide because I just want to go into this concept, measuring performance. This is where the connection between benchmarking and then performance measurement. Okay, performance measurement. So in benchmarking, it's all about measuring performance. When we talk about measuring performance, what kind of performance that we can measure? For instance, cost performance. Remember, in my first day of the class, I mentioned about what is site management is all about. Okay, in site management, we do have a few elements that we so-called the objective of a project. For instance, finish on time, finish according to budget. This is what we call cost. So in performance, normally we do have this kind of comparison. Remember, maybe you already learned about the S-curve. So what is the S-curve? Plan versus actual. That is always the comparison that normally people use in the construction industry. And this is what we call indirect cost and then direct cost. In US, for instance, they use different terminology. So that is an example of what kind of thing that you can measure based on cost. How about schedule? Schedule is similar to what we call time. Again, we can draw another S-curve that we call it physical S-curve. This is what we call plan versus actual. Okay, the same concept, but for the timing, not for the cost. Huh? And then what else you can measure? Now you can measure safety. You see, we are learning about safety. You can measure in terms of what? Total recordable fatality rate. And then total recordable injury rate, DART, day aways, restricted or transfer rate, EMR, experience modification rate or rating. So this terminology normally being used in the US. We in Malaysia, we do not use that terminology, but simply say whatever the things that you can measure about safety, whatever index or whatever that you can relate, that is what we call something that you can put in the list of your measurement activity. And then change performance. Okay, scope changes and even VO. Remember, at construction site, we do have a variation order. Whatever changes in terms of scope, in terms of design, in terms of dimension, whatever, you can always record those things because all those things have implication toward cost and time of the project. When changes happen, then it will affect many things. And then what else? Rework. Rework is with regard to quality. When you install something which is not in accordance to specification, or perhaps you utilize a lot of unskilled workers. So unskilled workers normally do have issue with the quality product. So the quality might be rejected. Again, it will cost you money. It will cost you in terms of time. It will affect a lot of things, your productivity. All right. So you can measure about rework. And then productivity itself. So where do we use productivity? Remember when we learn about planning scheduling class, productivity is being used to calculate the activity duration. Okay, activity duration. So they are being measured in terms of the quantity and then time. Okay, quantity and time. So initially, for instance, when we plan something, let's say we plan to do site clearing for 10 days. That is what we call original productivity rate. But in reality, we never know. So we need to measure those things, and then only we know that we are going to be lagging behind because of we are not working as productively as what we want. Okay. And then even out of those examples, things that we can measure, we can always coming up with a so-called quantitative way of measuring. We can attach whatever numbers and figures so that we know to what extent that we basically now compared to our original plan. Okay, that is where does this so-called the concept of productivity come from. So now we go back to our slide. Okay, so in this slide, there is a two wording here. Lagging indicator, let me get this thing. Lagging indicator and then leading indicator. So when we do benchmarking, we have to basically use some kind of indicator to see where we are at now, okay, our current position. And the one that I mentioned to you earlier about all kind of statistic in terms of fatality rate, in terms of accident rate, in terms of cost of accident, those are the things that normally we associate with this indicator. We call it lagging indicator, okay? Lagging indicator. And a long time ago, or even until now, people who do not understand about this kind of indicator tend to rely mostly on the lagging indicator, whereas you should rely mostly on so-called leading indicator. Okay, so it is not to say that relying on lagging indicator is bad, not to say that, but relying too much on them, basically you are missing a lot of opportunity to make improvement. That is the idea. So nowadays, with the advancement of knowledge, people do some kind of research. At the end of the day, people understand, oh, in order to improve safety, we need to rely on certain indicator. So the issue is that what kind of indicator that we can use. All right. So indicator that we have to use mostly should be more basically leading indicator plus the lagging indicator. Not to say we cannot, the statistic is basically now is gone case. No, 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 no. That is not the issue. We keep the statistic alive so that statistic is good that it can give you a quick view on something, but then there are other things that you can do. All right. So the rest of our slide later on will be focusing on this indicator. Okay, before we go into example of leading and lagging indicator at the end of our slide. Okay, now let's see. We want to utilize safety benchmarking. So by the way, you can Google under my name, uh, safety benchmarking in the construction industry. I do have one paper with regard to this topic anyway, that I did a long time ago, maybe more than 10 years back. Okay, first step. First thing first, decide what to benchmark. Because benchmarking can be applied to many, many things. Even in safety itself, there are so many elements that you can basically benchmark, not everything. Let's say you choose to benchmark on the safety culture alone, okay? Safety culture only, not to mention any other things. So once you decide, okay, you are going to focus on that particular area. Then analyzing where you are, your current position. This is very important, because if you want to make improvement, you must know your current standing, okay? Your current position in terms all kind of indicator. Otherwise, you cannot, you do not know where to start, how much to improve. Otherwise, the scope will be very big. At the end of the day, you basically lost focus. Then selecting partners. How to select partners? Okay, I'm not really sure in your country, but in Malaysia, for instance, we do have Construction Industry Development Board, CIDB, that basically take care of our construction industry. Every year, for instance, there will be measurement in terms of contractors' performance. The contractor in Malaysia can be measured in many ways, in terms of safety performance, in terms of what we call overall project performance, etc., etc. And this organization every year will give award to certain contractor, so-called the winner for that particular year in terms of safety and whatnot. So that is a good start where you can partner with a good organization. Similarly, even we in university, we also have partners. When we want to improve our university ranking, we must find partners, okay? Previously, our partners might not be a top university, as for instance, MIT, Harvard, Imperial College, or whatever, because our level might not be very close to this university anyway. But as time passed by, we build our strength, for instance, and then we can approach top university. Otherwise, top university wouldn't be bothered with a small university. And even now, some university from Indonesia, for instance, have always made us as their partner, collaboration and whatnot, for them to improve. That is an example how basically you find your partners. You find partners which is better than you. Then working together with your partners. Working together with your partners, meaning to say you can send people to learn. So their people can come to your organization to give training. You can adopt some of their system. Certain organization basically do sell some kind of their product. You can use their product as a start, then later on you modify, or basically you come up with your own system once you understand where to improve. And then you basically learn what kind of things that you can practice and put those things into the real workplace. Then you are going to see the result maybe in the next 5 years. Okay, so this figure is based on my paper. Okay, this is just an example. How do you do safety benchmarking? Okay, let's say there are 5 stages in the level of safety. Okay, 5 stages. First stage, stage number 1. Stage number 1, it looks like if you read the statement, company is just beginning to realize they need to have a formal safety process. Company has recognized the need for formal safety program, but has no formal process. Meaning to say this could be the level of awareness. Okay, organization or people inside organization basically aware that they need to do this and that and whatnot in order to practice safety effectively, but simply they might not have the budget or resources to fully implement. Okay, this would be considered as stage 1. How about stage 2? So stage 2, if you read through, write down policy and procedure. Now, after you're aware, then basically you put everything in writing, a so-called proper documentation of safety program. Okay, Then stage number 3. Stage number 3, I would say company has trained the supervisor team, reinforced behavior, change in appropriate behavior, measure, safety record, promote. All right. So this could be, for instance, this is what we call safety program. Okay, stage number 2. This is example of you do have ISO 45001 OSH management system, for instance, OHSF OSH management system, meaning to say you do have some kind of you do prescribe to certain OSH management system so that you can be audited, okay, evaluated. Then stage 4. Okay, normally once you have ISO in this particular stage, what's next is basically you do improvement based on whatever the NCR, non-compliant report. Even though you already implement all kind of OSH management system, but again, when you are dealing with human, there will always people who do not comply with the rule. At the end of the day, you are going to have some kind of non-compliant report, or you do have some kind of weaknesses. So you focus on that weaknesses alone. For instance, promoting safe behavior. Okay, if the behavior is the issue. All right, and that will be stage number 4 and stage number 5. Stage number 5 is basically safety culture. So ultimately, next 2 weeks, we are going to have class based on safety culture topic. So if ultimately organizations should go for implementing for safety culture, that is the ultimate motive of any organization. Once you already have some kind of safety culture in your organization, then everything will fall into place. You don't have to force people to yell at the people to follow rule and regulation anymore. Thing will always go almost like automatic. It is like driving a aeroplane where you put your gear on automatic autopilot. That is the concept, okay, of safety culture, where everything basically has been designed so that people will just basically comply rule and regulation because they believe so, because they believe that is good for themselves and organization. They are not being forced to do so. Okay, so based on that 5 stages, what I did was during my small research in my paper previously, I want to know what could be the current state of safety program of organization, and the next 2 to 4 years, what could be the future state. So this is what we call benchmarking. You compare with the current situation with the next 2 to 4 years situation. Okay. Stage number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You notice there is a number in the bracket here. The number indicate how many organizations believe that they are still at stage number 1. But bear in mind that this was maybe 10 to 15 years ago data, which might not be accurate now. Perhaps by now, I don't think many organizations do not aware about safety anymore. Maybe they already passed on stage 1. Okay. But anyway, this is just to show you what is benchmarking is all about. So during that time, when I did the study, 17, meaning to say more than half of the organization that we survey only at stage 1, and then 15 at stage 2, only 2 at stage 2, 5 at stage 4, and none believe that their organization is basically having the safety culture yet. Okay, but what would happen in the next 2 to 4 years? Okay, in the next 2 to 4 years, what happened is that 5 of these stage 1 organization that they thought that they are at that stage wanted to improve one more step, one more stage. Okay, that is good. At least they want to improve. And then 6 will improve 2 step, and 2 will improve 3 step. 4 will improve until 4. That is a big. I would say that is very ambitious, but that's okay. Okay, I don't think within 2 to 4 years you are able to do that unless you work very hard. But that is okay. That is the concept. And then how about people in the stage number 2? 15 people organization, 7 of them will move 1 stage. Okay, that would be reasonable. And then 4, the remaining will move into 4 or even 5th stage. And the good thing is that, meaning to say, by the next 2 to 5 years, at least 13 organizations say that they will be having some kind of safety culture in place in their organization, and none of the organization would like themselves to be remain at stage number 2. Okay, so meaning to say, majority of the organization will move from stage number 3 even to stage number 4, number 5. So which is good, meaning to say, if it is at a stage number 3, they would be having some kind of OSH management system already. So this is very good, because in order to have a good safety culture, this is the basis. You need to have some kind of OSH management system at your workplace. Otherwise, it is very difficult to implement safety culture, because safety culture involves what we call nurturing habit in everybody's, the way people behave. So it's not going to work effectively unless you already have some kind of system working perfectly at your organization. Okay, that is an example of concept of safety benchmarking. Now we want to go into safety performance. Okay, before we go into that, there is a saying based on Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker is one of the top management guru. Okay, he do have a lot of books about management. So he basically say, you can't manage what you can't measure. So what does that thing simply mean? So meaning to say, if you want to manage something, that thing must be somehow you can measure quantitatively. So that's why a lot of qualitative research, even though you can do qualitative research, but sometimes people can argue, how do you come up with the result? So whatever the qualitative research, to a certain extent, you can always make that thing try to be somehow quantitative. You attach some kind of figures. For instance, you have been familiar with so-called Likert scale. What is Likert scale? Likert scale mostly measure perception. Perception is basically qualitative. But once you attach some kind of figure, and you do have some kind of weightage with regard to Likert number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, then basically you can measure something. You see, once you can measure something, then you will know to what extent your current position, so that you can make improvement. That is the idea of what this Peter Drucker basically said. And then Dr. Frank Rose mentioned, if we are in the business of promoting OSH, why do we use failure as the measure of success? Okay, so what does this saying simply mean? Remember, I mentioned to you about indicator, lagging indicator, and then leading indicator. So Dr. Frank Rose basically imply most of the time people use lagging indicator. Lagging indicator. Okay. You want to make improvement. Improvement is basically for future achievement. Why then basically you are rely too much on the lagging indicator? By right, it should be using so-called leading indicator. That is the, if you understand the connection, then you should be able to relate this saying. So that is the concept of this quotation. Anyway, okay, now we want to zoom in into performance measurement. Okay, safety health management system. So this is what we call system. Previously, before the introduction of a OSH management system, we do have what we call SMS. SMS. What is SMS? SMS stands for Safety Management System. And the model of safety management system looks like this. They do have, first element is policy, organizing, implementing, planning and implementation. And then the most important aspect is basically measuring performance. So this is where our OSH benchmarking basically start or begin, because if you want to manage safety and health, you should be able to measure some of the aspect that you already planned. You want to see to what extent your plan is basically successful. So safety performance measurement is part and parcel of OSH management system. And then relate to ISO 45001. You already in the second week of our class, you already read this thing and you did the quiz based on ISO 45001. This is what we call OSH management system, a new system just coming into the industry last 2 years. Now they are going into full gear, maybe by the end of next year. There is no more the old system, OSAS 18001. Now everybody will use this kind of system for safety and health. And if you notice, the element of OSH management system consists of the same thing: planning, support, operation, and performance evaluation and improvement. But in short, we can relate to PDCA concept. PDCA concept. So all the ISO management system is basically based on this approach. Okay, based on this approach, PDCA. What is P? This is P. This is D. This is D. P, D, C. C is checking, and then D is basically improvement. You see, the word performance is part of the OSH management system, in short. Okay, so that's why we need to do performance measurement. Why safety performance measurement? Okay, if we perform performance measurement, we are being provided the opportunity to recalibrate. What does recalibrate mean? Recalibrate or fine tune, or basically improve. In engine, for instance, car engine, if you hear some kind of noise, very noisy engine, so you need to go to the workshop in order to do some kind of things. So they will fine tune. There must be some part where the noise could be coming from. So similarly, this is the idea of improvement. Once there is something wrong with our organization in terms of safety and health, we need to figure out, and then we calibrate or basically improve. If we do not do performance measurement, then we never know. Okay, then we never know, and then at the end of the day, we never improve, and then we keep getting the same issue and again, high rate of accident, fatality rate, and then maybe cause of accident, etc., etc. That is the one we try to avoid. Okay, plan for performance measurement. What could be the step? First step, strategic planning session to determine what to measure. Okay, what to measure? Similar to benchmarking. Benchmarking is basically you select the area that you want to improve. Okay, in this situation, you want to measure performance. So what are the measurement? There are so many things that you want to measure. You might not want to measure everything, otherwise you won't not be able to have time to do this kind of auditing, but you just simply start with only a few areas first. Then once you get things running efficiently, then you add a little bit by little bit, so that at the end of the 5 years, whatever, you will have a complete system of measurement. Okay, so you start with small thing first. Don't be too ambitious. Structure and develop your performance measurement plan, what to track, how to track, establish measure, target, indicator, KPI, and then you measure, and then basically you make improvement. So this is the same step that we normally use in monitoring. Whatever monitoring is basically using the same similar step-by-step approach anyway. And then, okay, now come this wording, active and then reactive. Okay, when we want to monitor, we can use so-called active system and then reactive system. Reactive system, if you notice, monitor accident, ill health, incident. This is what we call statistic. So this could be related to so-called lagging indicator. So in another word, reactive, lagging indicator are all similar terminology. Later on, you will see another different kind of wording being used in order to indicate two different way of approach. One is what we call positive ways, and another one is negative ways. Negative ways, it is not to say useless. No, no, no. It's just in terms of effectiveness, it might not be much more effective compared to this system. That is the concept. Okay. All right. Now let's take a look at what are the example of active monitoring. Active monitoring meaning to say you concentrate on the overall aspect of management. So there are a lot of indicators that you can use. Okay. For instance, you can use the indicator of inspection, health surveillance, document preparation, active monitoring, managers commitment, observation. Okay, and then what else? Safety audit. You can measure the behavior and then do comparison with other company, etc., etc. So basically, you do not rely on the accident statistic alone. Okay, so there are so many aspects that you can basically measure. This is just example. We do have another example in the next slide anyway. Okay, so how about reactive monitoring? Reactive monitoring are all related to data. In order to be able to tell people what is your accident rate, for sure that accident must happen first, correct or not? Otherwise, you are not going to collect the data. You won't be able to tabulate your data. So you are waiting for that thing to happen. When that thing already happened, not much that you can do. That is the issue with regard to reactive monitoring or lagging indicator, where it is too late to react. Whereas in active monitoring previously, what happened, for instance, if you are able to measure the behavior of the workers, you know what? Psychologists have developed ways to measure behavior. And they already know the behavior of human being. You can measure so-called bad behavior or good behavior. And there are many tools that you can measure using questionnaire, using interview, using observation. You can observe the behavior of human beings or workers at the workplace through webcam or whatever, then you analyze. If, for instance, out of 100 workers, it looks like majority of the workers are practicing bad behaviors. Okay, this one is a lot compared to good behavior. So what this result will tell you eventually. So this result will tell you if you do not do anything, meaning to say in the near future, accident is the tendency of an accident happening is very high. You see, so once you have that kind of indicator, are you going to wait or are you going to do something? So this is what we call active monitoring. In a positive way, you will have some ample time to react. So we'll take some kind of action in order to improve the behavior of the workers. At the end of the day, you should, or somehow you are able to minimize or prevent accident from happening. Remember when we talk about causes of accident, majority of accident is based on unsafe act and unsafe condition. It is due to the behavior of the people. Okay, so this is what active monitoring, reactive monitoring, or leading indicator and lagging indicator is all about. The focus is on what? You focus on the data itself, which is too late for you to react, or you can focus on the data that you have ample time to react. Okay, so it is up to the management. If management fully understand this concept, I think they should go for the active monitoring more compared to reactive. Okay, challenge of measuring performance or improving performance. Sometimes when you force people to improve, every day you tell people or you motivate people to improve until people get so tired. Unless there are some kind of benefit yet that you can attach to. This is like what we call stick and carrot. Okay, stick and carrot, meaning to say whether you are going to beat people or you give people carrot. Carrot meaning to say incentive. Okay, when people see the incentive, then only they could be motivated to improve. So that's why in the payment system, we do have what we call bonus. Okay, nowadays, company they already understand you simply cannot pay bonus to everybody. You can pay a basic bonus, but then you must basically calibrate according to workers' productivity. So, for instance, uh, in an organization, everybody should have 1 month of bonus, for instance. That is the basic. But for somebody, he or she could get 1.5 month or even 2 month, 2.5 month or whatever extra bonus. Why? It is based on productivity measurement. That is to be fair to the workers who work harder than anybody else. So similarly, when we are talking about improving performance, we should be linking reward system to the performance in such a way that you ask people to perform better. What is it for that workers? If there is nothing being attached to the performance, what we call standard, then at the end of the day, people are going to fed up. Okay, people are simply going to get tired. Okay, that is the challenges when you ask people to improve more and more and more. Okay. All right. Now we want to zoom in into example of lagging and leading indicator. And you notice that lagging indicator do have different wording. See, trailing, downstream, or even the one that we already mentioned is basically reactive. Whereas the leading, upstream, or even what we call active. Okay, active monitoring is the same terminology being used. Okay, What are they? Basically, that could be, this one is basically, we call it negative. This one is basically positive. Okay. Now let's take a look at the example. Lagging or trailing indicator is measuring after the fact. Why? Because you are waiting for the data, accident, statistic, and whatnot. Then only you are able to say what is the statistic of accident happening for this week. But that event already happened, accident already happened. Not much that you can do in order to prevent, because people already die out of that statistic that you already collected. So that is why it is being called lagging or trailing indicator. Okay, most lagging indicator related to whatever statistic. This is just an example. EMR, don't worry about that. In US, they do use this kind of terminology in order to measure the insurance premium. In US, for instance, if EMR is basically lower than 1, then basically when you need to pay the insurance, your insurance premium will be higher, because people associate yourself as very risky, okay, as very risky, and then they put higher premium. Okay, that is example. Another example is basically whatever the rate, near miss rate, first aid injury, and then all kind of accident statistic rate. Okay, advantage. Not to say that the lagging indicator is totally rubbish. They do have advantages. They provide accurate and basically could be exact or nearly so kind of information, which is also necessary if you want to talk about something very fast. We normally, as human, would like to use some kind of statistic or figure. People are more convincing if you mention about statistic, okay, compared to all kind of explanation. So statistic can be used, but the issue is that they are not, they could be not comprehensive, or they could be very late. Very late in terms of it is too late that you cannot do anything about that statistic anymore. So data is historical, meaning to say the thing already happened. Past is past. And then it is too late to take action. Okay. And then watch for under-reporting. As I mentioned, statistic will be great if you get the comprehensive statistic. There is no doubt that once you get a good statistic, then basically you can use that thing to come up with certain policy or strategy. But again, the issue is that the measurement is after the fact, meaning to say things already happen. Okay, how about leading indicator? Okay, leading indicator is being called as predictor of the future safety. Predictor meaning to say, since we measure uh, based on indicator, which is based on OSH management system, almost anything you can convert into measurement, okay, even though they are qualitative in nature, but you can always measure. And then that kind of thing will provide you time, ample time to react. So at the end of the day, the accident might be minimized or be reduced, or basically maybe to a certain extent you can go for zero accident. That is the issue with the leading indicator. All right. So you see, if the indicator or the measurement that you do show poor result, then basically you will have ample time to basically react. And focus is on the process. You see, process meaning to say, while you are doing things, then you are doing some kind of measurement while you still have time before the end of the project. So meaning to say you can do something. You can make strategy in order to reduce the possibility of accident happening, not the end result. The end result is basically associated with lagging indicator. Only at the end of the day, you will get the result. But by that time, it is too late already. You cannot do anything. Disadvantages. Okay, even leading indicator do have disadvantages, meaning to say measure are not absolute. Meaning to say, if you want to measure about safety culture, one of the measurement of safety culture is the behavior. But depending on behavior itself, is not going to be sufficient. You need to have a few other indicators. Then only it will give you a comprehensive result which they get with the concept of what could be the safety culture in your organization. So meaning to say one measurement will not tell you all. You need to use a few kind of measurement. Okay. Most measurement are subjective for sure because it is qualitative in nature. So that's why it is not sometimes even when you measure about perception using a Likert scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even that thing is itself sometimes can be questionable because when people answer the questionnaire, they just simply answer, let's say they put 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. All the measurement is 5. Then basically, how are you going to basically come up with the conclusion? It is very difficult. No single measurement say it all. Several measurements are recommended. That is the concept. The lagging indicator are almost associated with all kind of statistic. That is correct. Whereas the leading indicator are associated with what we call certain safety performance. All right. I will give you example. Leading indicator for different position on the project. This is the example. Okay, let's say, how are you going to measure, to use leading indicator on workers measurement? On workers measurement, you see, there are a lot of measurement that you can do. For instance, you do the auditing on behavior. As I mentioned, human being, workers, whoever, they do have bad behavior and good behavior. So psychologists already team up with, for instance, people in the construction industry. There are tools that you can measure the behavior of the people. So if you do that, at the end of the day, you will know whether people are practicing good behavior or bad behavior. And then, example, skill level. So let's say, if you measure the skill level of your workers, most of them are unskilled workers. So what does that thing tell you? From the record that we already have, accidents normally involve a lot of unskilled workers. Why? Because unskilled workers, they do not know many things in terms of what kind of hazard. Because in order to be skillful, you need to have a proper working experience or proper working years. After working for so long, and normally experience will help you to better judge, to make better judgment when you are doing certain work. You are tend to be more careful compared to new and young person. You see? So this is the example. If you can measure these things, you can make it indicator, then perhaps you will have ample time to react before the accident basically happen. And then foreman. Foreman is basically the head of the workers. Let's say you can measure on many aspects. I just focus on the last one. Time spent on crew or with the crew. So foreman is supposed to be with the crew all the time, but if he is busy doing other things other than with the workers, so meaning to say he basically don't give a proper advice. If he were there most of the time, then he will see what kind of bad behavior that workers are doing. Then he can say something. He can correct the workers right away. So in such a way, his act basically is a preventive in nature. He basically prevent the potential of accident trying to happen because he corrected the workers to act or work or behave properly. That is example. And then how about superintendent or supervisor? Okay, so supervisor, his work involve majority with inspection. If he would go around the construction site, he is around all the time, going everywhere. Okay, instead of sitting in the office with the air conditioning and whatnot, but he always do the inspection. He would have corrected again the behavior of the workers, or he could have spotted the issue with poor safety practices. He can basically jot down in his whatever the system. Nowadays, in the future, we might have people using all kind of phone in order to just jot down or basically just key in, just tick all the inspection checklist. So at the end of the day, we can come up with how many percentage of poor safety practices out of this inspection. And then how about project managers? So project manager can take a look at safety requirement. Okay, he can take a look at what are the safety requirements being put in the contract document and how much, so how many of the thing being listed there being put into practice. So if the thing being listed is a lot and then the thing being practiced is only a little, meaning to say they have a potential of accident waiting to happen. This is just another example. How about safety manager? Safety manager or SHO officer, for instance, that have knowledge about safety. This guy normally can do hierarch that we mentioned, hierarch analysis. Hierarch analysis is not easy to do because it involves a lot of activities and it involves a lot of type of hazard that you need to evaluate. You need to come up with the probability and severity, and you need to come up with the safety measure. But if, for instance, safety officer can do hierarch analysis, perhaps at the beginning of the project, and then revise that thing during the project. So for sure, he should be able to indicate what could be the high risk kind of activities so that he can warn people ahead of time. If, for instance, he didn't do the hierarch analysis, there is no hierarch analysis being performed, then basically nobody knows what are the activity in the category of high risk, and people just simply don't bother, and at the end of the day, uh, the potential of accident to happen is basically will be higher. Okay, you see. And then subcontractor, even subcontractor, contractor can ask subcontractor to come up with a safety plan for whatever work that subcontractor or even contractor want to do. You can always come up with a safety plan. Okay, normally we do the planning in terms of the timing. Not many people that do the safety plan. Now we come up with a safety plan. Okay, safety plan perhaps will tie up with the hierarchy. Let's say if you do not do the hierarchy, even you can always come up with a safety plan once you already have what we call method statement. Method statement is for you to is a procedure, basically step by step to install or to construct something. while you are implementing or constructing something step by step, for sure, each of the step do have safety precaution that you need to take care of. So this is what safety plan is all about. If subcontractor are able to come up with a proper safety plan in whatever work that he planned to do, for sure, in that situation, he or she can basically minimize the potential of accident from happening. All right. So in summary, lagging indicator is basically accurate, but they provide information too late. Okay. So meaning to say they are useful, but they do have some kind of weaknesses. And then how about leading indicator? Leading indicator is have a lot of potential because it will give us ample time to react, but they are not going to be perfect either because you need to do a lot of to use a lot of measurement at the same time in order to confirm the result. But once you get those things, so it is better than having to wait for accident happening. Okay, so meaning to say, I would say in conclusion, you need to apply both lagging indicator plus leading indicator at the same time at your workplace. But perhaps now on, perhaps you can use this thing maybe around 20% and put more effort using leading indicator. So this one and plus this one could be a perfect combination that you will have a full potential in order to prevent accident from happening. And last one is just some example. Okay, some example of leading indicator. So you can read advantages and disadvantages. I will not go through this thing, but I just want to give example of leading indicator. Okay, so there are so many aspects of OSH performance that you can measure. What you can measure, for instance, risk assessment. You see, risk assessment. Sorry. Okay. No, no, no. Okay, let's. No, no. Oh my. Okay. For instance, risk assessment. See how many risk assessment complete. This is what we call hierarchy. Even though you put everything in hierarchy form, but since there are too many activities around, sometimes you get tired of doing the complete form. You just maybe do the assessment 50% of all the recorded activities. So 50%, which is not going to be good. If you have 75%, meaning to say you almost cover majority of the activity, then you can be certain that you already know that what are the risky activity, and then you come up with the strategy. If you do not do the complete risk hierarchy assessment, then the potential of accident happening is greater. That is the example. And again, even work procedure, how many percentage of work procedure, or basically this is what we call safety plan. And then inspection report. You can go around and then do inspection based on safety practices. If from your report you figure out that there are a lot of safety practices, for instance, a lot of people do not wear safety helmet, and then you expect that a lot of people to get some kind of minor injury or even a big injury or even fatal as a result of falling object. And then employee, you see, wearing PPE, also you can measure. And then how about incident accident investigation? Whenever accident happen, immediately you should conduct a proper investigation. There are methods to conduct proper investigation, and then you need to come up with the report. Why it is important to come up with the report? Because inside the report, normally you will write down what could be the causes of accident. If you already identify the cause of the accident, meaning to say we can learn from that as not to repeat the same mistake again and again. But if there is no report being made, so what does this thing tell us? Meaning to say, people are not going to learn from the accident that happened. That accident might happen again and again. Okay, and then what else? Uh, for instance, training. Let's say, in order for people to basically practice safety satisfactory, people must be trained, because safety is not something that you learn in school or even university. Even in university, if you just complete your bachelor degree in civil engineering, I don't think there is a even topic or even subject to cover about safety and health in general. Perhaps you will learn that thing in your green card class, in just a few hours of class. Okay, you see, you need to basically being trained. So let's say, if for instance, people who are being asked to go for classes or orientation, there are only a small numbers that go to class compared to majority of the workers at the workplace. So what does that thing tell us? So meaning to say, so a lot of people not being trained, so they might not being exposed or aware of potential hazard and how to take care of themselves, how to even wear a proper PPE and whatnot. So again, at the end of the day, there are potential of accident about to happen in the next future. Okay, so the leading indicator basically provide us with the opportunity to react while we still have time. Okay, if you can basically relate lagging and leading indicator with regard to the maintenance of your car, for instance. Okay, if for instance you depend on the lagging indicator, when something happened to your car, then only you go for repair. But the other aspect of car maintenance is not to wait until something happens, is to do what we call preventive maintenance. So that's why when you buy a new car, they already have a schedule of maintenance every 5,000 kilometers. If, for instance, if you buy a car, if every 5,000 kilometers, even though if you do not move the car, within 5,000 in the next 3 or 6 months, you still need to go to replace the oil. If you do that thing consistently, normally your car will last for very long time. Okay, I do have a very old car with me that I passed to my brothers. But during my time, I have been using that car, old car. But because of the proper maintenance, the car has been running smoothly. But when we pass to somebody else, they do not. They just doing that different kind of maintenance. We call it reactive maintenance, waiting for things to happen, and then we can hear all kind of sound coming from the engine. See, so the similar concept we can apply in terms of managing safety and health. All right, so that is the end of our session. So perhaps you can understand the concept that I stop recording.